Netflix is infamous for its admirable content, to say the least. That being said, there are also a lot of upsides to the streaming platform's catalog. While the spooky season has passed, one of the most recent shows to come out of the streaming service is Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, an 8-episode horror anthology that culminates with talented directors and distinct horror styles to create a series that is worth a watch. It's a unique and entertaining show that gives off the right amount of creep factor while also indulging in some innovative visuals and stories. That being said, some episodes are definitely better than others. So with that, here's my ranking of all A Cabinet of Curiosities episodes from worst to best. Number 8. Law 36. While certainly not an awful episode, Law 36 turned out to be my least favorite out of the bunch. It's got some great direction, neat lighting, and cool ideas, but I found the characters to be extremely one-note and formulaic. No one really stuck out to me as interesting, and sure, maybe that was the point, but there wasn't much substance to be found with that. As far as the story itself goes, it's alright. Like I said, there's some cool concepts that I admired, but the plot weared out during certain points of the episode. Overall, I found this to be very meh. Number 7. Dreams in the Witch House. One thing is for sure, Dreams in the Witch House certainly comes close to a fever dream. Being generally regarded as the worst episode, it's definitely understandable. The acting is questionable, the story fumbles in its structure, and it comes across as more goofy than scary. But I also kind of enjoyed the episode for that. It's heavily flawed, yes, but the bizarre writing and visuals definitely engaged me, and I had a fun time watching it. Although I had no idea what that CGI route was about. Good God. Kazara! Free us both! Yikes! Number 6. Pickman's Model. The concept of evil art possessing someone is pretty original. Luckily, this episode does take advantage of that, providing creepy visuals and horrific moments that are very memorable. However, the pacing just didn't do it for me. There are many points in the story that wax and wane in speed, resulting in uneven attachments to the characters and narrative. It's an alright episode, just needed more of a pull. Number 5. Graveyard Rats. Graveyard Rats is what I consider to be the first good episode in this ranking. It's a fun time. Even with this episode having the shortest runtime, it still manages to pack on a lot of creative effects and claustrophobic atmosphere, with an ending that is wonderfully mean-spirited. It isn't anything outstanding, as some of the plot points are a bit uninteresting, but it's a solid story. Number 4. The Outside. The Outside portrays the message of learning to love and accept yourself pretty cleverly. It's well directed and acted, with the cinematography and performances emitting an offbeat tone to the overall narrative. The way the concept is carried out consistently kept me hooked, and I was always invested in the characters. That being said, the episode doesn't go without its faults. One of my big issues with this episode is the execution. The final 10 to 15 minutes of this episode do partake in Weird Town visuals, but the conclusive arc of Stacy, the main protagonist, is a bit half-baked, so the ending doesn't feel satisfactory enough. This is one of those episodes in this series that really would have benefited from a longer runtime, as it would have allowed the characters and themes to be fleshed out more. Nonetheless, there's still a lot I liked about this episode. It's memorable, creative, and entertaining. Number 3. The Murmuring. Haunting, yet heartbreaking, is probably the best way to describe Jennifer Kent's The Murmuring. A married ornithologist couple visit an old house to invest in their job of bird watching and documentation. Stacy, played by Essie Davis, slowly starts to uncover something treacherous in the past history of the house, though. Right off the bat, this episode is glossed with gorgeous cinematography and aerial sound design. An aspect I found refreshing in this episode was the lack of music. Compared to some of the other stories that rely too heavily on background noise, The Murmuring allows for the audience to take in the beauty of this house and location this couple is staying at. It does a great job of really building up to the reveal of the mystery. I was constantly invested in this couple. The performances led by Essie Davis and Andrew Lincoln were well acted, and the characters themselves were layered and well developed. On the other hand, the structure could have been a little bit better. There is sort of a twist near the end of the episode that does uncover something about this couple that should have been acknowledged in the beginning of the episode. It isn't bad by any means, and certainly does reveal a little more about these characters, but the twist would perfectly feed into the emotional trauma that they inhabit throughout the story. Nonetheless, I still really like this episode, and the stronger elements far outweigh the weaker parts of the plot. If you're in for a ghost story, I'd highly recommend this one. Number 2. The Viewing. Tied with number 1, The Viewing is hands down the most aesthetically pleasing episode. Glossed with hip visuals, slick sets, and trippy sound design, this episode is only more so accompanied with its intriguing characters. Granted, this episode won't be for everyone, as the first 40 minutes is essentially just people talking, but the episode switches gears quickly once the last 15 minutes happen, which is delightfully gory and weird. My only real issue with this episode would be the underutilization of some characters. There's only a small amount, but I wish some characters got an even amount of screen time compared to some others. Other than that, this episode was easily one of the most memorable. Number 1. The Autopsy. The Autopsy just barely beats the viewing. This episode is packed to the brim with an eerie atmosphere and supernatural concepts that are extremely unique. Right off the bat, the episode is accompanied by a 70s aesthetic that perfectly sets the tone for the mystery of this episode. The characters we are introduced with, Carl Winters and Nate Craven, played by F. Murray Abraham and Glenn Turnman, are very distinct in their personalities, and the way they contribute to the story is excellent. The effects are also incredible, probably some of the best in the show. With an episode titled The Autopsy, it certainly does the job of being a gory watch from beginning to end. But another large factor of what makes this episode so chilling is the gradual build-up. The way the story and imagery unravels into something totally bonkers is extremely satisfying, and the payoff is just as good. From beginning to end, I had a blast with this episode. It combines so many different horror elements and blends together for a story that is sprinkled with twists and turns. So there you have it, my ranking of all 8 episodes in Cabinet of Curiosities, and as it stands, most of them are pretty good. To be fair, I really only found 2 out of the 8 episodes to be outstanding, but that isn't to say that there wasn't an exceptional quality in each episode. I had a very enjoyable time watching the series, and what story each episode had to offer. It's honestly awesome that someone like Guillermo del Toro has gotten the opportunity to make a series like this, because the concept is executed perfectly. While not everything works, it's very clear that a lot of the effort was put into the direction, performances, and overall mood and set designs to make each episode be presented as very distinct from one another. It very much pays off. If you're a fan of horror or just anthologies in general, it is definitely worth watching.